The story goes that the one who would become the second patriarch of Chan Buddhism was at wit's end. He had tried everything. He had studied Buddhism. He had gone to great lengths. And yet, the fundamental resolution of his existential problem had yet to occur. So at the beginning of this koan case, he goes to Bodhidharma and he says, I would submit with exasperation in his heart, I am not at ease. I am not at ease. The invitation is to look deep inside your heart and to see whether that is also true for you. Have you come today because you are not at ease? Because some basic existential conundrum or riddle has yet to be solved. The perennial non-dual teaching, particularly as we find it in the tradition of Advaita Vedanta, essentially is the last stop on the train. Once you are empty-handed and you know it, you can come to this teaching. You have tried everything else, and perhaps, in a manner of speaking, you too are at wit's end. Perhaps you began by trying to secure happiness in pleasure, be it sensuous or intellectual. Maybe it was to be discovered in sexual pleasure or in the pleasure of collecting fine objects or in intellectual pleasure, the pleasure that accrues to one who is an expert in his or her field. There are more or less sophisticated versions of the pursuit of pleasure, but all of them, it stands to experience end in empty-handedness or in failure. Nobody has to tell you that pursuing pleasure leaves you feeling empty. You know that through your own endeavors. And so the attempt to find pleasure in experiences, in states, in objects of any sort proves untenable. Consequently, perhaps you turned to worldliness, specifically to the pursuit of success, understood in one way or another. And what did you discover here? The paradox is that you discover that at the very height of worldly success, you felt unfulfilled or empty. And if so, that must have been quite a shock, quite a turnabout. If it is clear to you that all such forms of worldliness cannot but end in emptiness, then it's also clear that you have to, as it were, move on. It's at this point that some people will come to what could be termed the moral or political betterment of humankind. They may wish to leave a legacy for their children, a legacy of some kind or another. They might get attached to relationships, romantic and otherwise, in the hope that they can secure abiding peace and ultimate happiness in and through these relationships. Or perhaps they have some tech-based notion of trying to optimize for social impact. Until it's clear that all such conceptions fail, this idea or pursuit will also need to carry itself out. However, when it is stunningly clear that all moral and political attempts whose point is to fundamentally secure the ultimate aim, whose point is to enable one to come to abiding rest. Until it's clear that, unless it's clear that all such attempts yield only empty-handedness or empty-heartedness, this too will be pursued. However, at some stage, it is self-evident that one cannot go on in this way. Two things are now clear. One, all endeavors pursued so far have failed. And two, you remain gnawingly or more than gnawingly dissatisfied. If this is true for you, then you have come to the right place. This is precisely, we might say, what the second patriarch felt when he more or less said, I've tried everything, everything I could think of. And yet I am unsatisfied. I am not at peace. I am not at ease. I cannot come home. I am not at rest. The first plot twist comes then when one steps onto the path of self-knowledge, otherwise called Jnana Yoga or Jnana Marga, because all that has been said so far is simply said with a view to getting one to the trailhead. At this point, the path of self-knowledge does not in any way claim that one should try to get rid of suffering, for that is simply, it will turn out more suffering. Instead, and here's the twist, it states that one is to investigate two things. First, the deeply held beliefs that one has, those that turn out to be false upon further inspection. And second, a deep experiential openness to what is always already the case. Here then is where we begin. The starting point in Advaita Vedanta is often termed the way of discrimination, or the path of discrimination, or the path of exclusion. This is a teaching device, one that we will go into shortly. It is not the final teaching. The point of this device, which states that the seer is not the seen, the witness is not the witnessed, the knower is not the known, the subject is not the object, is simply to allow one to begin to directly experience being the witness that one is. When we provisionally distinguish ourself, witnessing awareness, from all objective experiences, then we start to know ourself on our own. Once we start to know ourself on our own through a series of investigations, we can ultimately return to objective experiences and here discover that they too are actually made of ourself. The final teaching, as it is loosely said, is that every thing or every single experience is nothing but the consciousness that I am, is nothing but ourself. In the direct path teaching, or in the direct method, we commonly investigate three different realms, or those that at first blush seem to be different. Those being the world, the body, and the mind. Start with the world. To begin with, it will be helpful to ask the question, in my actual experience, do I ever find the world appearing? Indeed, if I set aside thought and memory, do I ever discover the world appearing as an actual experience? Try, in fact, without availing yourself of thought or memory, to reach out and touch the world. Where indeed is this thing, the world, in direct experience? When you conduct your attention to hearing or to sound just now, does that sound come with a label, the world, affixed to it? When you, for example, simply listen to the sound of this voice, does anything about the sound of this voice tip its cap toward its being the world, or even evincing the world? Or when you listen to the sound of an airplane or to distant traffic, is there anything actually in the sound of the airplane or of the traffic that gives it away that it is made of the world or coming from the world or evincing the world as such? When we look closely at the mind concocted belief, that is to say, simply at the belief that there is an independently existing world, and when we discover that we only ever find sound or sight or texture or smell or taste, then what happens? What happens is that there is the actual experience of intimacy. The sense of there being a disenchanted, independently existing world or universe out there that is always beyond my ken, beyond my reach, little by little begins to fade away. And in its stead, at least at this level of understanding, it is clear that there are simply sounds, simply sights, simply textures and smells and tastes. We are considering then the difference principle. Let us go to sound to understand this more fully, now that sound is more intimate to us than a conception of the world as such. Henceforth, drop the world as such and simply focus on sound, be it an ambient sound in your environment or perhaps the sound of this voice. And simply ask yourself the question, if I am aware of the sound of this voice, does it follow that I can't be the same as the sound of this voice? If I am the one, whoever this one is, who is aware of or conscious of or who knows the sound of this voice, is it not then immediately clear that I cannot be identical with the sound of this voice? Consider the same question from a different angle. When there is the hearing of the sound of this voice, to whom or to what does this hearing appear? Allow that question to draw you back into yourself. After all, it is self-evident that there is awareness. It is self it is self-evident that there is awareness of sound right now. Simply allow the awareness of the sound to bring you back to the awareness that you are. And note gently, non-mentally, openly, innocently what this is like. In fact, as you hear any sound just now, be it the sound of this voice or some other sound, let that sound slowly trace its way back to you, the awareness that is aware of this particular sound. And simply see what it is like to be this awareness. Now go to any experience of touching right now. Perhaps your hands are on your knees or your hands are touching one another. And examine the question gently, innocently. Who is it or what is it that is aware of this sensation? Who knows or is aware of this particular experience of touching? And note how this question gently and naturally carries you back to the background awareness that you are. To understand the difference between awareness or the witness and objective experience, allow the attention to go outward toward the touch and note what this experience is like. And then allow the touch to slowly point back to the witnessing awareness, you, that is aware of the experience of touching. We are investigating the principle which states that the witness is different from the witnessed. Consider the second category from the vantage point of the mind, that being the body. Go to your actual immediate experience of the body right now. And that is an experience of sensation. It could be the global sensation, the undulating vibration. Or initially, it could be regarded as a particular sensation within that larger pulsating field of sensation energy. When the cue is given, go to that sensation, it's as if attention is going outward toward an objective experience. Here, a sensation. Now, when the question is heard, to whom is this sensation appearing? Note how that question wends its way back to the background awareness that you are. Go outward toward the sensation again. And there is an effervescent vibration. And now allow that effervescent vibration to point back to you, the awareness that is ever aware of this particular experience. Now, go to the concept of the mind and then drop the name or label mind and simply stick with the actual experience, namely with a thought or with a feeling. Specifically, allow any thought to arise. And notice what it's like as the attention illuminates the thought rising, temporarily persisting, and then setting. See this again. Allow a thought to arise. and note how it is illuminated before it perishes. When you allow a third thought to arise in a moment, this time let it point back to the awareness that you are, to the awareness that is aware of the rising and falling of the thought. Gently move back and forth between the background, the awareness that you are, and the foreground, the newly rising and falling thought, until it's crystalline clear to you what this difference between background and foreground really is. Note that we've been surveying sense perceptions, bodily sensations, and thoughts. Let's deepen our investigation by noting that awareness is changeless while experiences change. For example, do thoughts change? Allow any thoughts to arise, one after the other, and first ask, is it indeed true that thoughts are changing? It is obvious that thoughts are changing. Now move from a thought, allow one such to arise, to a sensation. And go back and forth between a thought and a sensation until it is self-evident that these two, the thought and the sensation, are changing. Now include in this inquiry the third experience, that of hearing. So go from a thought to a sensation to a sound, and in each case ask, is it changing? Now, the more potent question is this one. As you move, once again, from a thought to a sensation to an auditory perception, a sound, ask yourself the question, is awareness, the awareness that I am, changing, or is it changeless? It could be said, it is already clear to me that awareness is different from that of which it is aware. But in what sense or senses is it different? Continue the inquiry. Is it true that I, awareness, am changeless while experiences, thoughts, sensations, and perceptions change? Continue the investigation until it is utterly self-evident that experiences continued to change while I, awareness, remain ever changeless. Next, consider the question, is it true that I, awareness, am one or unity while experiences are many? It should already be plain that experiences are many. Therefore, simply move from thought to sensation to sound while asking the question, though these are all many, is it true that I, awareness, am one? Now, a doubt may arise. This is all well and good, the doubt says, so long as we are interested in these, quote, trivial cases. But what about the hard cases, those having to do with dukkha or suffering? This doubt can readily be resolved. The three hard cases, it could be argued, are thus: I am in pain, or these are my pains, or maladies, or sicknesses, illnesses, etc. And I feel such and such a way. I am very angry. I am deeply despondent. I am paralyzed with fear, and so forth. So the second category consists of deeply held, uncomfortable feelings. And the third has to do with any recurrent thoughts, thoughts that apparently should be gotten rid of, so the mind says. Thoughts like, I am alone. I am powerless. I'm guilty. I'm a shameful one. I'm a terrible person, and so on. Come to the first hard case, that of pain. If the mind says, okay, well and good, pain is occurring right now, then simply go to the pain. Turn inside the body and see where there is pain according to the mind. The first question to ask is this one. When I look very closely at my pain, without the use of thought or memory, do I find any ownership here? Does the pain actually reveal that it is mine, or indeed that it is anyone's? Again, when I simply stick with the experience itself, do I find any evidence for ownership? Any evidence for this pain belonging to somebody, let alone to me? Does the pain have a name tag on it, so long as I stick with the direct experience? Go more deeply into this matter. Let's suppose that one were suffering from an incredible case of amnesia, such that all memory, short term as well as long term, were utterly vanquished. That is, there's no memory possible. Without memory right now, and hewing very closely to the experience, do you discover any I, me, my, or mine contained inside of the experience of pain? Does this experience indeed allow you to answer the question, whose is it anyway? It does not. Without the use of thought, without availing oneself of memory, the experience is simply showing up in the first place as pain. Ownerless pain. after the fact, a thought may arise and claim it by saying, this is my pain, but this is my pain. You're not experiencing it. We'll come around to recurrent thoughts shortly. Set that thought off to the side for now, since we're only interested in the experience of pain and not in a different experience, namely that of thought. We go deeper here. Actually, when you look more closely at the pain, do you even find the label or name pain affixed to this experience? That is, when you take off all names and labels, that is, when you set aside the mental function and you simply look at the experience itself, can you actually find pain here? Is that what this really is? The question is not how does the mind post hoc categorize it? We set that off to the side once again. The question is, what is this really? And the astonishing discovery is that it's only a sensation, ownerless and painless. It's just a vibration. The mind might, after the fact, attribute qualities to it like density, solidity, warmth, coldness, etc. But when we look at the sensation alone, we are like blockheads, as it's sometimes said in Zen. All we discover is a tautology. The sensation is a sensation. The vibration, just a vibration. Nobody owns it, and it hasn't yet been cooked up into pain. It's just this. As it is understood, without the superimpositions, that this experience is only a sensation. What is it like? What is it like for me, awareness? I am ever relaxed, ever open, ever uninvolved. And it's not that I become open or that I become uninvolved. Rather, the understanding is that I am open, welcoming, and uninvolved. And thus that this sensation is simply appearing to me. Consider next any strong feeling like I'm angry or upset, or I am sad, or I'm afraid or scared. In this case, use memory perhaps to call forth an experience when you were upset or sad or afraid. Let the memory help to make this experience, this feeling, vivid enough. Once again, ask yourself the question, when I simply stick with the feeling itself, do I discover any ownership here? Does anything about the feeling actually suggest that it belongs to someone, in particular that it belongs to me? A thought may arise, yes, it says I am sad, etc. Set the thought off to the side and go back to the feeling, back to the feeling itself. The feeling itself contains no such ownership claim. Go deeper still. Allow the feeling to arise again and consider the question, do I even find such a thing as a feeling? Or rather, do I only find a sensation or perhaps a loose network of sensations? For example, when I go deeply into the experience of what is ordinarily called anger, what I discover might simply be sensations in the solar plexus. I'll drop the label solar plexus and simply note that there is some cluster or loosely affiliated network of twinkling sensations. Or if the feeling is one of fear, when I go into the belly region and I drop the label belly, I may likewise find that there is a loose affiliation of twinkling sensations. Examine the question, do I find anything other than this sensation or this affiliation of sensations? When I look closely and when I bracket all other thoughts, can I discern anything other than a sensation or a cluster of sensations? And if so, where is all the suffering gone? With this discovery, what is my actual experience like? I am peace. I don't find any I, me, mine, or mindness, and I don't actually even find a feeling as such. I only discover twinkling sensations appearing to me, and I myself, awareness. am peace. Finally, allow any obsessive, so-called obsessive or so-called recurrent thought to arise. One that the mind has often said needs to be gotten rid of. One there is some strong aversion to. The first question again, if you bracket memory and you stay only with the actual experience of this thought, you look closely inside the thought. Do you find any I, me, my, or mine somehow affixed to it? A thought might arise and say, of course I do. It's an I thought. I am such and such. I am so and so. I feel this way, etc. Okay, but that's inside the thought. Who is it that is aware of that particular thought? Isn't that like a dream I arising in the midst, indeed, in the midst of the dream thought itself? And aren't I awareness the one who knows or is aware of this dream like thought that contains a pronoun I in its midst? Go more deeply into the matter. When you allow the thought to arise, do you actually find an entity I, an entity me, in the thought itself? Probe the thought. See whether there is some substantive entity evident therein. For example, in the thought, I am powerless, does one actually discover an I in that wave like pulsation? Is there an entity, a thing, a something, a core existent object or a core existent subject actually inside the thought? The discovery made here, as well as in countless other places apropos I thoughts, is that there never was, is, or shall be a separate ego entity existing within the confines of the thought itself. let this understanding sink in. There is no independently existing ego entity inside of any thought. And I am the one aware of the rising and falling of the thought. I am welcoming and uninvolved. I am peace. In the koan case mentioned at the outset, the second patriarch said, your disciple is not at peace. Your disciple is not at ease. Bodhidharma then said, show me the one who is not at peace. The second patriarch then perhaps goes off and looks very closely, as we have done today. He replies later on, the I is unattainable, which means the ego I does not exist. It does not exist in a pain. There is only sensation after all. It does not exist in a feeling. There is likewise actually only sensation. And it does not exist in a thought. There it is just pulsation energy. To which Bodhidharma replies, you have found your peace.